There is a battlefield blazing deep inside my chest, where heaven pleads for freedom and hell will grant no rest. A holy whisper calls me to lay my burden down, while shadows hiss that pleasure waits an amber liquid crown. I wake with ash and shame still clinging to my tongue, the echo of the night before still bitter, sharp, and stung. I swear before the morning light I'll never drink again, while something coils behind my ribs and softly says, "But when?" I know the wreckage alcohol has carved into my days, the broken vows, the hollow eyes, the self-inflicted blaze. I hate the way it steals my will and chains me to its throne. Yet still my mind insists it's mine, a kingdom that I own. Be sober, be vigilant, the scripture cuts and clears, for like a roaring lion prowls the enemy of years. I feel his breath in liquor aisles and glasses raised at night. He stalks my weakest memories and dresses them in light. The Spirit speaks in stillness, firm but never loud, reminding me whose child I am beneath the shameful shroud. No weapon formed against you shall prosper, heaven cries, yet bottles glint like polished swords beneath my weary eyes. Right after every relapse, when the bruises still are fresh, when guilt is like a branding iron pressed into my flesh, the thought of drinking nauseates, revolt is fierce and strong. I cling to that disgust as if it might not fade for long. In those first days of clarity, resolve is iron tight. I see the enemy plainly in the pale fluorescent light. I taste the poison in the glass before it meets my lips. I swear I'll never board again that burning, sinking ship. But time is a soft eraser of the sharpest kind of pain. It blurs the jagged memories like sunshine after rain. The wreckage fades to sepia, less terrible than before, and whispers start suggesting it was not that bad a war. My mind begins revising what my body knows is true. It edits out the chaos in the lies I once outgrew. It paints the drink in golden hues of laughter, warmth, and ease, and hides the broken promises in nights upon my knees. The devil does not scream at first. He reasons like a friend. He says, "You've learned your lesson now. This time will have an end. You won't go off the deep end. You're wiser than you were." And hope becomes the camouflage for something darker sure. God answers not with thunder, but with steady, quiet grace. He brings to mind the tear-streaked lines that once ran down my face. He shows me all the mornings when I could not meet my gaze, the lonely, shaking afternoons lost in a foggy haze. Yet even with that evidence displayed before my sight, a part of me still argues wrong is somehow going right. It says the past was circumstance, bad timing, stress, and fear. It swears the next experiment will somehow end up clear. How many times identical the story has been told. The script unchanged, the curtain call as bitter as it's old. The first drink like a match strike in a forest dry and dead. The second like a gale force wind that fans the flames ahead. And yet I stand convinced somehow the fire won't spread this round, as if the laws of consequence no longer will be found. Insanity and polished shoes parade across my brain, declaring that repeated loss will now produce a gain. The war is not just appetite or thirst upon my tongue, it's theology and tyranny where rival kings are hung. One claims my soul was bought with blood upon a rugged tree. The other claims I still belong to self-indulgent me. For the flesh wars with the spirit, ancient words declare, and I can feel the crossfire thickening in prayer. My knees press hard against the floor while cravings flood my veins. Two voices shouting promises, two very different gains. The devil offers instant peace in liquid burning form, a counterfeit of comfort, brief shelter from the storm. He says just one will steady you, it'll quiet all the noise, and dresses death in velvet gloves and soft, persuasive poise. But God speaks of a harder road, of discipline and light, of picking up my cross each day and choosing what is right. He does not hide the cost of war or sugarcoat the pain, yet promises a harvest if I will in him remain. I hate how alcohol becomes the axis of my thought, how every plan in every place by its permissions wrought. I hate that it can hijack dreams and reroute every aim, reducing vast eternal hope to thirst and fleeting flame. Still something deep within my mind insists that I enjoy the reckless rush, the numbing hush no sorrow can destroy. It tells me that I love the taste, the buzz, the careless cheer, though all the evidence in front of me suggests I tasted fear. The first week clean, the memory of vomit, tears, and dread is vivid as a siren screaming red inside my head. I clutch that horror tightly as protection from the lie, and tremble at the thought that I could ever justify. The second week, the edges of that memory grow thin. The sharpness dulls, the nightmare dims, temptation creeps within. I start to hear selective scenes of laughter, music glow, and push aside the ambulance that always seemed to tow. By 30 days, the mind begins its treacherous campaign. It says you've proved your strength at last, you've broken every chain. A normal man could have a drink and not be dragged to hell, and pride becomes the open gate where darker forces dwell. How strange to know the pattern as it forms before my eyes, to see the trap assembling in all too familiar disguise, to watch myself step closer, though I know just how it ends, as if I'm both the captive and the jailer who pretends. I tell myself, this time I'll stop before it goes too far. I'll measure out the ounces like a cautious connoisseur. But history stands laughing, with a ledger thick and wide, recording every oath I made and every time I lied. The devil loves statistics when they favor his design. He points to all the failures and says, "See, you are mine." He says you've tried 1,000 times and fallen just the same. Why not embrace the darkness and relinquish all this shame? God counters not with ridicule, but with mercy fierce and deep. He speaks of 70 times 7 and promises left to keep. He says my worth is not defined by bottles on the floor, and that his grace is stronger than the cravings at my door. Yet grace does not erase the choice that rises every day. It gives me strength to stand, but I must walk away. The battlefield is not abstract, its aisles and text and bars, its lonely evenings whispering how close the taverns are. Sometimes I feel like Job, beneath relentless testing skies, my comfort stripped, my motives weighed, my weakness on display. I ask why this particular thorn will not leave my side, why peace with other sins came swift, but this one will not hide. And still the war drums thunder when a craving starts to swell, a flash of thought, a memory, a subtle, scented spell. My pulse begins to quicken like a soldier hearing fire, and every nerve awakens with that combustible desire. In that split second hangs the fate of months of hard-won ground, the quiet prayers, all the meetings where new hope was found. One text, one turn, one secret stop beneath a neon sign, in trenches that took weeks to dig collapse in half the time. I wish the devil looked grotesque and monstrous as he schemes. Instead, he often wears the face of all too reasonable dreams. He talks of moderation, balance, and having earned a break. It makes rebellion sound like self-care I should take. But God reminds me gently of the mornings thick with dread, of conversations half remembered, and cruel things that I said. He shows me loved ones' wounded eyes, in trust worn paper thin, and asks if fleeting pleasure's worth inviting that again. The strangest part is knowing all of this and still feeling like my heart could bend against my better will. Knowledge alone has never been sufficient for the fight, for craving is a tidal force that mocks mere human insight. So here I stand between two kings who both demand my trust, one forged of holy sacrifice and one glittering with lust. One promises a narrow road that leads to living streams, the other wide destruction dressed in technicolor dreams. I've believed 1,000 times the next would not be like the countless other downward spirals set alight by strike. I've said, this time I understand, this time I'll stay aware, then watched awareness crumble in the intoxicating air. The pain of last relapse burns hot like coals upon my skin, and in that heat I cannot fathom ever drinking again. But embers cool to harmless gray with passing weeks and days, and from the ash arises an old familiar smoky haze. Oh God, the war is wearying. I'm so tired of the swing between fierce, tearful promises and what tomorrow brings. I'm tired of being shocked each time the pattern reappears, as if I have not walked this ground for years and years and years. Yet somewhere in the clash of swords and arrows tipped with flame, a deeper truth comes surfacing in calling out my name, that I am not the battlefield but one for whom you fight, that victory was seated on a dark and dreadful night. And when the lie insists again that this time will be new, that somehow all the laws of fire will not apply to you, I pray I'll hear above the roar that ancient steady call. Choose life, choose light, choose me, and let the stronghold fall. As months began to stack like bricks between me and that fall, the distance feels like safety, like I've scaled a higher wall. The memory of handcuffs, tears, and floors grow faint and small, and confidence begins to bloom where once I could but crawl. The further that I travel from the wreckage of that night, the less I feel the sting and the less I fear the fight. The scar becomes a story I can tell without a shake, and pain that once was screaming dulls to just an ache. I start to walk with steadier steps and even clearer eyes to build again the trust I broke with half-remembered lies. And in that healing process lurks a subtle hidden snare, the thought that maybe I am cured and beyond the old despair. The enemy waits in patience. He is never in a rush. He lets the memory of the crash dissolve into a hush. He says, "Look how far you've come. Look how strong you stand. Surely now one single drink would fit within your hand." The further from the flames I get, the colder grows the fear, and what once felt like certain death seems distant, not so near. The mind begins to romanticize what nearly took my breath, and paints the edge of that abyss in softer shades than death. I scroll through old reminders of the vows I swore to keep, yet distance turns those sacred words to something half asleep. The urgency that once compelled my desperate cry for aid is traded for a casual thought that maybe I have paid. I tell myself the battlefield is mostly cleared away, that surely now the enemy has little left to say. But pride becomes the open door I do not see ajar, inviting back the very foe I thought was banished far. The further that the calendar flips pages into years, the more selective grows my mind about the former tears. It keeps the clink of glasses and the laughter warm and bright, and files away the ambulance that vanished in the night. I begin to test the boundaries in innocent disguise, to linger near old haunts beneath pretense of being wise. I'm strong enough to handle this, I casually proclaim, while striking flint against the stone that once ignited flame. Distance from that last relapse can feel like solid ground, a fortress built of sober days and a neat ascending mound. But if I cease to guard the gates with watchful, humble prayer, the ancient war resumes at once, the devil's still right there. So as I move still farther from that final bitter fall, I beg for fresh remembrance, not selective at my call. For time alone will never win this war inside my soul. Only daily chosen surrender keeps the darkness from control. And now I stand in twilight where the outcome's yet unknown. Two armies camped within my chest, both claiming me their own. I feel the tension in the air before the trumpet sounds, and wonder which commanding voice will finally abound. Will heaven's patient whisper outlast temptation's cry, or will I trade eternal truth for one more fleeting high? Will discipline and daily bread grow stronger than desire, or will I fan once more to life that old familiar fire? Who wins this war at eventide when I am tired and worn? When loneliness creeps in at dusk and courage feels so torn? Will I remember all the graves that line the path behind, or let selective memory gently trick my mind? Is victory a single blow that lays the tyrant low, or 1,000 small obediences no one but you will know? Does triumph roar in public light for all the world to see, or whisper in the quiet choice no bottle makes to me? I ask you, God, when cravings surge like thunder in my veins, when sweat beats on my brow again beneath familiar chains, will you be stronger in that hour than lies that feel so real, when what I know and what I want begin to twist and reel? And devil, when you taunt me with, you'll always be the same, when you parade my history around like evidence of shame. Will I believe your closing speech that I am doomed to fail, or cling to grace that says I'm loved beyond it all? Perhaps the winner's chosen not in some dramatic scene, but in the quiet morning when my conscience still is clean. Perhaps the crown is placed each day, I bow instead of bend, each time I let the craving rise and choose not to descend. Still I can feel the battle lines drawn sharply in my chest, and know that vigilance, not pride, will guard my only rest. For if I drift from watchful prayer and think the war is done, the enemy I now understand may yet have won. So here I linger in the space where fear and faith convene, beneath the might have been again, in what might truly mean. 2 kingdoms wait upon my choice, 2 futures yet unwon, and every sober breath I take decides which side has won. I'll be praying for you guys.